Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Lattes Literature. I apologize for any bad sound or just poor quality on this video. I am just filming on a patio in Hawaii and I don't have my usual equipment. So we are at the end of our vacation now, and I thought we would squeeze in a little Lattes Literature because it has been so overdue and highly requested. So I've got everything on my little Kindle right here, and I have some really good books to recommend. So if you have some time to just kind of relax and read throughout the month of January and February, they tend to be kind of slow months, perfect for reading while cozy inside, then I highly recommend these books in particular. So the first one, which is so chilling, such a good thriller, and I just finished it in like 2 days on this trip, is called Behind Her Eyes. It's by Sarah PINBOROUGH. It is very different than I had expected. I expected more of a traditional domestic thriller, but it kind of turned out quite differently from that. It has a few tiny supernatural elements to it, mainly to do with dreaming, so I would say you have to be okay with that, but it really does add something to the plot, and everything else is just real world setting, so it just is beautifully written. The author does a really good job of building the suspense through different characters' perspectives. I don't want to talk about the story too much. It's really about a woman who becomes embroiled with a couple and doesn't know which of them to trust. And what I will say is you cannot trust any of the narratives really. So someone in all of the narratives is kind of out there to trick you, and that is what makes it such a good read. If you're more interested in more of a traditional domestic thriller, you know, along the lines of Gone Girl, anybody who likes that novel, I think is always looking for another one to knock your socks off like it did. The Marriage Lie is also a really good one. That's by Kimberly Bell. I found that it was not quite as fast-paced and as much of a page-turner as Behind Her Eyes, but equally, maybe sometimes that's a good thing as well, so that was a really enjoyable one for me as well. On the much darker side, I know I've talked a little bit about Karen Slaughter's Pretty Girls before. Very chilling dark novel. If you enjoyed that one, I know it was a really popular read for 2017-2016. The Good Daughter is another one of her novels that is very much, you know, true to her writing. It's not like her crime novels, which I don't enjoy quite so much, which are more of like a police type of novel, but this one, The Good Daughter, also switches perspectives between two sisters, and it really builds the tragedy in terms of the different perspectives of the two daughters and what they have experienced. And it's a very dark, possibly triggering novel for people, so I would definitely read about it and see if you are okay with that. But I think Karen Slaughter does a really good job of kind of honoring very dark experiences and describing them. Then you might enjoy The Good Daughter, especially if you like Pretty Girls, and you will definitely like The Good Daughter. Although I would say it's maybe not quite as suspenseful, but instead builds actually more relatable and stronger characters in some ways. For those of you who enjoy a good historical fiction novel, Jennifer Donnelly is your woman. I have talked about her before, and if you have never read The Tea Rose, go out and read it now. I read it years ago, so I can't really do a Lattes Literature on it. I don't think I would read it again because I just really relished it while I was reading it, and it's actually a series, so if you're looking for something like that to really get into, it's all about the time of the tea trade in England, and the protagonist in The Tea Rose is an amazing character, but she does have another novel that I had not read that's actually apparently more geared towards young adults. It's called These Shallow Graves, but nonetheless I found that everything that I enjoyed about The Tea Rose was still true about These Shallow Graves, and her detail about the time period I think reaches just the right level, so you feel like you're really immersed in that time, but you don't feel like you're you know, like getting every detail about every garment that they're wearing to an annoying extent. I would say the plot is maybe slightly predictable. Her father gets murdered, and she essentially goes about solving that crime and falls in love while she does it. So it's just a really lovely kind of slightly traditional plot with some surprises along the way. It does have a nice little twist at the end that I really enjoyed and did not guess. So I kind of found that I was guessing where the plot was generally going, but the little twist at the end I could not foresee. And so for that reason, I think it's just a really nicely written novel, really easy to read, and a nice test as well of a good book is whether you still find that you enjoy it and become immersed in it if you read it over a long period of time. So whereas the other ones that I've discussed with you I read during this vacation, these shallow graves I read over a period of like a month and a half at home, reading just a few pages a night, and I found that despite that I still really enjoyed it and found the quality of the writing to be really high. So highly recommend anything by Jennifer Donnelly. Next up are two novels by Lisa Unger. She's definitely like a master of thrillers. She's really good about switching different perspectives as well and building characters to really build a story that interrelates all of them, particularly like within a community, if that makes sense. So really I think her novels are suspenses set in communities that you really start to become attached to. So I read two books by her. They're both Jones Cooper books, and it starts with the novel Fragile, which is the first one. I actually thought the first one was better than the second. I was a little bit disappointed by the second. I found it to be a little bit more predictable, and by then I kind of knew which characters I liked and so wasn't quite as into the character development, but still nonetheless really good books. If you like mysteries that are set in communities, I think she does a really good job with building that narrative in like quite a short kind of format. She really builds those characters, all of their relationships and threads that bind them from like a very young age over into adulthood. She does a really good job of weaving that story. Widow by Fiona Barton, another one that's been very highly rated. I would say I enjoyed The Couple Next Door a little bit more than The Widow. The Widow is very chilling. It's about a missing child and a lot of darker themes about child abuse, and I found that the problem with this novel was similar to the one with The Couple Next Door. You don't really like any of the characters, and this one feeds you a lot more clues and therefore is also quite predictable in terms of its ending, and so it's really just about finding out the details. So if you have the patience for that, then it is a well-written novel, and I think it honors the themes well. But that said, I wouldn't say it's like one of my top suspense novels. One of my least favorites was Into the Water by PAULA Hawkins. I just found this one very slow. I found that the author used a lot more themes and metaphors. It was a bit of over-reliance on that to the point where the descriptions of water and how seedy and scary the water is just got a little bit boring, and I just found it kind of difficult to finish. But to be fair, I did again read this novel over quite a long period of time, which of course makes it harder for the suspense to really build, right? So I just found the writing to be not as strong as I would have expected. I have a lot of thrillers this month for sure in Lattes and Literature, and the last one is no exception. And this one was not my favorite because I spoiled it for myself by figuring it out. I feel like if you can read this one without thinking about it too much, you will enjoy it more because it has a big twist at the end. So this one is called The Good Girl by Mary Kubica. It also builds suspense by telling the story from different perspectives, and I think it does a really good job of that because all of the characters are actually, you know, quite immersive, and you become very immersed in their narrative. That said, I did go ahead and guess the end around halfway through, and once that had happened, I feel like I kind of sped through to the end to just kind of confirm my suspicions. So it really is all about whether or not you are able to make that leap, and then if you are, then I feel like it's maybe not quite as enjoyable because a lot of it is about getting to that end and that solution, and everything else along the way is not maybe the strongest of writing that I've read in terms of suspense, but still very good. That brings us to the end of another Lattes in Literature. I will include all of the novels that I mentioned down below, as well as their authors, so that you can download them easily if you would like to go ahead and read any of them. I think my top picks for sure would be Behind Her Eyes. I think the different novels by Lisa Unger, always really strong picks. If you like historical fiction and you still haven't read a Jennifer Donnelly, then I think now is the perfect time. It's just like a perfect winter read. It's just really enjoyable. It's like a good set of afternoon tea with a little bit of suspense thrown in. So those are my lattes and literature recommendations for this time around. If you've read anything that you really enjoyed, please leave them in the comments down below. My favorite types of novels do tend to be historical fiction or suspense, so anything along those lines right up my alley, but I'm always really open to hearing any of your recommendations for things that you've really enjoyed, whatever the genre. So thank you so much for watching and supporting this series. I'm really happy that you guys enjoy it, so I will keep making them as long as you do, and as long as I can get through some books and find the time to do it, which I need to make a priority in 2018. So cheers to that. Thank you so much for watching, and I will